Hey guys, Chris from Propel here, and today we're in Muttal, Germany. Today we're back in Brooklyn, and today I want to talk to you about a topic that comes up in the shop all the time. One of the main reasons I started this channel is to really document and bring other people along the way as I start to experience this e-bike industry really growing up. And over the past 4 years, it's really been a pretty wild ride. And I've really enjoyed all the experiences I've had so far and all the amazing connections I've made, just everything that's kind of come about as a result of some of those different experiences and connections. And here today, I'm going to talk to you about a new one. It's a new company that I'm launching called Bloom. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that company is in just a moment, but I want to give you a bit more of the backstory of how this thing came about. So I'm launching this company, Bloom, with a friend named Justin Cosmides. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Justin before we get into the company, because I think it helps to kind of set the stage for what we're doing and kind of what's to come. So Justin's originally from Baltimore, but he was living in Brooklyn, and that's how we initially connected. And he has an e-bike brand called Vela. It's a really nicely designed e-bike. Originally started in Brazil, and then Justin later brought it to America and helped to build it up here. But one of the really interesting details about the Vela story is that they're producing their bikes in America. They weren't always doing that. Originally they produced in Brazil, and they spent some time producing in Asia, and then made the decision to start producing their bikes in Detroit. I remember him first explaining this experience on the Misco Electric channel.
We decided to scale up production in China, and we're faced with the same issues that, quite frankly, the entire industry was hit with. Undersupply, now oversupply, shipping issues, quality issues, communication issues, travel issues, and tariff issues at certain points. I like to say the cons list is very, very long, yet we all seem to continue to have gone towards that route. But really why we chose to move production to the United States, we wanted to do it honestly from the beginning, but there weren't that many options. There isn't the same ecosystem that exists in Asia and Europe.
And once he started producing his own bikes in Detroit, he started to think about the rest of the industry and how most of them must be kind of experiencing the same thing. And after talking with a lot of different brands, he realized that they could potentially see the benefits of producing e-bikes and other micromobility devices here. So he started to think a little bit bigger. He started to do some research. He learned that only 3% of e-bikes are produced in the US compared to over 50% in Europe. But if you look at the automobile industry, you'll see that actually it's more similar between how much we produce in the US and how much they produced in Europe. He got to thinking like, well, maybe we could do more here. So he started to work on this idea some more. Eventually he came to me with this idea and realized that I had been thinking about this for some time as well. I mean, I visited all these factories in Asia and Europe and seeing what they're doing there and thinking like, well, it's kind of interesting that we're not really doing any of this here. Surely there must be a way. Even if we're not doing frames, doing assembly, doing some level of production, why are we not doing that? So my brain gets to thinking, and really we started to connect more on this topic, and soon enough we started putting together a plan to actually make this idea a reality. The name of the company is Bloom, and the way I would like to best describe it is that we're a vertical integration partner for the micromobility industry. So we're not actually producing our own e-bikes or products. We're really working with other brands to help them to reshore and help them to build up manufacturing, assembly capabilities, as well as assisting with things like logistics and service after sales. And a lot of that's just easier if you're managing it locally. I think this is a really important detail because I think even more important than getting new vehicles on the road, to keep those on the road by supporting them appropriately and making sure that people are safe and really having a good experience. I'm not under the illusion that we're going to be able to do all this stuff locally on our own. That's why I like this idea of Bloom, because it's more about an ecosystem. It's that we need to work together for things to really bloom. And if you look at the bike industry right now, it's not really blooming. It's actually, it's in kind of rough shape. I mean, you look at these micromobility companies, you look at like the VanMoof story, for example, one of the most funded companies ever in the e-bike space, and they went bankrupt. But why is that? In a lot of ways, what we're thinking is really it's because they're building this e-bike based on fragile infrastructure. There's a lot of opportunities to kind of create more robust infrastructure. I mean, you could argue in that specific case, there's other reasons why that happened, and I don't want to get too deep into that. But if you look at the industry, some of these challenges of like having too much inventory, really having like unpredictable supply chains, having really supply chains that are not so easy to manage. A lot of these issues could be solved if you're producing locally, if you really shorten that time between the demand and actually production. We're hoping that we can kind of start a movement. And from our side, like, we're not just trying to like blindly go at this and say like, you should do this because people want to buy America. I do think that's an element, and we don't really have too many choices to do that today. A lot of people might not necessarily know. If you look at the electric car rebate, one of the main stipulations is that electric cars need to be assembled in the US. A lot of people have been complaining that the electric bike rebate hasn't really gotten any traction, but some of that might be traced back to this specific detail. From our side, we're really hoping to build up those capabilities for more assembly to happen here. And really, whether we're doing it or others are doing it, we really hope to encourage that sort of thing, as I think we do need some of these jobs here in the US. A lot of people say like, oh yeah, we don't need that, we can get it cheaper elsewhere. But there's a lot of details when you peel that back a little bit and say, well, no, there are people that want those jobs, that would love to have those jobs, and we plan to create them. And so we're excited about that. We're excited about the opportunities around that. So there's going to be a lot on the training side, workforce development stuff, especially some of the opportunities to really leverage some of the communities that might not have as many job opportunities as the rest of society does. Some of them might just work better in this type of factory type setting. So, but the other side of it is, we got to start somewhere. When I first started Propel in 2011, people told me the same thing, like, you're crazy, people don't like e-bikes. They used to go to different trade shows in the US and connect with different people in the industry, and it's like, really, e-bikes? Like, you would get this kind of nasty look from people, and they're thinking that this is like what's corrupting the bike industry. But the reality is, actually 12 years later, everybody's looking at e-bikes as the saving grace of the bike industry. So it's kind of interesting how those things change. And if, in the grand scheme of things, not that much time has passed. Obviously, in other industries, a lot of this is happening. We're seeing more reshoring. We're seeing a lot of these different changes happen. You're seeing a lot of support from the government for these sorts of things, as they're recognizing that there are certain geopolitical challenges. I don't really want to get into all that right now. Eventually, we might talk about some of those topics, but I really wanted to just kind of introduce this company, what we're doing, and maybe help to describe it a little bit better, because you're probably going to see some press come out or some different people talk about it, and it could easily dismiss it as like, that's a terrible idea, you're not going to be able to do it. And I say, watch. And you might say that that's a little overly ambitious or whatever, but why not? Why not have confidence in that? You can't do it without that belief that this is possible. I don't believe that it's going to be easy, but I believe that it's possible. I also believe that a lot of people support this idea. I believe that a lot of people want this. I believe that a lot of companies want this. But I also believe that it's very challenging to do it on your own. And that's a lot of what the premise behind this is about. We can do together what we can't do on our own. And so this idea that we can come together with different brands and companies and such to make this idea, this crazy idea, a reality. We really hope to work towards a more cohesive and connected industrial ecosystem, which hopefully can bring more resiliency and transparency to this industry. And since our launch, we've been able to build some pretty amazing connections. For example, we connected with a group called Faction Bike Studio, which really is one of the largest bike design and engineering firms in the world. So we're actually going to work with them as our technical design partner, and they'll be working with us and the companies under our umbrella to help with the design and engineering of products and that sort of thing. And that's what we're doing. So we started the company. Actually, just last month, we kind of officially launched, but we're just starting to more socialize it right now. We're starting in Detroit, where initial automobile was built. A lot of these resources exist in the US to produce, to handle some of these other details. but it just hasn't really been brought together in a meaningful way, in a way that's actually viable. And some of the challenges is that you need to do certain things at scale. You need to actually make some pretty serious investments, and that's the other side of it, of us just not doing it on our own. I mean, I personally don't really have the resources to do it on my own, but I know that if I come together with other people like Justin and then try to get some support from some other folks and other companies, we are going to be taking on some investment to start the company. And then we'll also be trying to work with different states and other government folks to try to build things up, because I do believe that there's a desire for this. Obviously, there's many reasons why the government would want this. There's many reasons why the consumer might want this. We're starting Bloom at New Lab, which is in Michigan Central in the Corktown neighborhood of Detroit. This area is specifically what Michigan is calling the Transportation Innovation District. And the idea is that Michigan as a state is really recognizing their rich history in launching the initial automobiles and having this like really robust manufacturing base for automobiles and that sort of thing. Trying to think about what does the future look like? Look at opportunities to kind of innovate there. And we see it as like a perfect opportunity for Bloom to launch there. The idea that we can help to introduce some of these innovations and perhaps like repurpose some of these resources which exist. And I think that there's opportunity for that sort of thing throughout the country, but I think Detroit really is one of the best places to start there. And we found a lot of support from Michigan and Michigan Central, which is the organization that's kind of running this district and these properties around that area. And I believe that Michigan, in a lot of ways, they're really looking to build up manufacturing around micromobility and e-bikes. And I think that there's a need to create this kind of like cluster, if you will. So I don't want to get too far into that, but you could kind of see how this is happening in other places in Europe, like Portugal, for example. And the New Lab is a really interesting place to start because they started in Brooklyn, and it's really kind of a innovation space. Many early companies are there. They're kind of launching new products, developing prototypes. There's a lot of tools there to do that, from 3D printing to welding to all types of metalwork to some robotics. Really interesting place there. And so they started in New York, had some connections with them because our shop in Brooklyn is across the street from there. And now they're launched this facility in Detroit, which is much larger, and they're having a focus specifically around mobility. So perfect opportunity for us and what we're doing. So we'll have space there, which will be doing some assembly, some different things, some different prototyping work, some manufacturing, but kind of more like smaller scale manufacturing. And then we have some other things that are coming online, and I'll be able to talk about them pretty soon. We're looking to work with existing companies or companies that want to start, perhaps, and they can start in a simpler way. Traditionally, the idea that you can build a prototype or a couple prototypes, that sort of thing, and then you have to go overseas to have that produced. The idea that you could potentially do that locally and perhaps do it at a smaller scale to start out, it could perhaps foster more innovation in this space, innovation in a more sustainable way, which I think is really critical. We'll be really working with a variety of different brands in all different sectors of the micromobility space, everything from e-bikes to scooters to cargo bikes to big cargo bikes, think four-wheel cargo bikes, trailers, whatever, all under this heading of micromobility devices, or I guess you could even say like light electric vehicles. So you might be wondering, what about Propel? Propel's not going anywhere. Don't worry, all is good. We've been building up our leadership team there, and really a lot of what I'm doing with Bloom kind of intersects well, and there's going to be a lot of kind of resource sharing and different things like that. For right now, this stage, what we're looking for, one, support. If you can kind of tell people about it, if you can comment on this video, you can share the video. We're also looking to connect with brands that might be interested in anything from assembly to manufacturing to assisting with service after sales, warehousing, delivering, that sort of thing. I think with the appropriate connections and resources, we can really do this in a meaningful way. Through the conversations I've had so far, I feel like we have a lot of of support for this. So looking forward to just continuing to gain more support. If you got any questions, concerns, leave them in the comments. You could check out our website, togetherwebloom.us. Pretty basic right now, but if you want to sign up, for the newsletter, stay in touch with what's going on, we'll keep you posted. I plan on launching some different videos over the coming months and years of helping to understand more about how things are made, the supply chain, all these different details. So looking forward to that. I hope that you guys are as well. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Really appreciate your support. And I just want to say one last thing, that the reality is I don't think that I could really do this without having the support of some of the connections that I've made largely through this channel. So I'm really humbled by the opportunity to even do this, to think that this is possible. And I also feel the responsibility to do this, that, I've been trusted by many people that have connected with me and supported me over the years. We're trying to go in the direction of good, and I feel like this is good. This is good for the industry, and I hope that you guys will support this. I look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks so much. All right.